Hello and thank you for joining our webinar. My name is Rupesh and I will be chairing this webinar today. I'm joined by Ryan Storer, who's a member of our client services team here in EMEA. Today we'll be showing you how you can utilize Marin to optimize towards impression share. And this includes best practices and automation in terms of reporting and analysis. If you do have any questions at any point during the webinar, if you navigate towards the right-hand side of the screen, you'll see a box where you can actually ask as many questions as you like. Towards the end of the presentation, we should have some time to answer your questions. We'll also be able to respond after this presentation in a more formal way on our website. Again, if you have any additional questions outside of this webinar, please feel free to reach out to your client services manager or online marketing manager, or even file a support ticket if you're running into any technical support queries. In terms of the format, we'll be switching in between a presentation slide and the application. Please note that the application is using a demo account, so if you do see any features that you've not seen previously, please ignore. In terms of the agenda, there's a couple of items we'll be covering today. One is what is impression share and what does it mean and how is it displayed in Marin. Optimizing towards ad rank and budget, using Marin's automated bidding for impression share, and just before we run into any questions, we've actually got some useful alerts, so alerts which will enable you to identify, depending on your requirements and actions based on those alerts as well. So I'm going to hand over to Ryan at this point, who will take you through the bulk of this presentation.
Thanks, Rupesh. Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. We're going to kick off today's presentation with a really quick overview of what impression share is and how it's displayed in Marin. So as you're probably already familiar with, impression share is a calculation of the impressions that you received divided by the number of impressions that you're eligible to receive. Now, the impressions you received data, that's synced into Marin every night in the nightly sync. However, it's worth noting that the value for the impressions you are eligible to receive is a value that's synced in from Google. However, it's delayed by 24 hours. So if you're ever looking at impression share in Marin for a date range that includes yesterday, you'll probably see some rather strange figures. However, that is perfectly normal. So the advice here would be to not include yesterday in your date range when you're looking at your impression share values. There's also the term exact match impression share, and it's important to note that this refers to instances only where the search term exactly matches the keyword that triggered the impression. So it's not exactly the same as impression share. There is that difference where we're looking only at instances where the search term exactly matched the keyword in your campaign. Impression share is viewable in Marin at both the campaign and the group level. And this can be brought in using the view builder. And I'll just quickly jump into the platform to show you where you can find this. So I've just clicked into the view builder, and you'll notice that under the traffic and cost column, there is the option to bring in the impression share and any impression share change columns that you're interested in having a look at. And of course, I can customize the order. And when I save this, it'll bring the values into the grid. And of course, as usual, you can create reports on these values as well. Now, in a perfect world, every campaign would always have 100% impression share. However, we all know that's often not the case. And when this does happen, this is usually due to one of two reasons. The first one being your ad rank, and the second being your budget. So we'll quickly run into what these are and how you can optimize towards these values. We'll start off with the ad rank calculation. This is a value which is determined by your quality score at the keyword level multiplied by your bid. So those are the two main factors in determining your ad rank. Budget, on the other hand, is a setting that's controlled at the campaign level. And it's important to note here that your delivery settings, whether they be standard or accelerated, this will have an impact on your impression share. And we'll come to that in a bit more detail a bit later on. Focusing on ad rank to start with, it's important to note here that if you find you're losing impression share due to an insufficient ad rank, Google's main suggestion here is to increase your bids. Now this assumes that a linear relationship exists. So if you were to increase your bids, then you'd get a corresponding increase in impression share. I think it's very, very important to note and understand that improving your quality score would also allow you to, would also have that linear relationship. So it would also improve that impression share value without increasing that bid or that cost per click. So if we jump back to that formula, your ad rank is determined by your quality score multiplied by your bid. So if you were to increase either of those two multipliers, you'd be increasing your impression share. Now, I think it's important to note here that this linear relationship exists mainly for exact match terms. What we'll find is that as you start diving into a phrase, and especially broad match terms, the relationship between your bid and your impression share isn't quite so linear. And this is for the reason that as your ad rank score improves or gets larger, you can actually find that you'd be eligible for additional keyword options. And these may be options that may not be relevant to your campaigns and you may not wish to bid for. However, with broad match terms, increasing your ad rank, it could trigger bidding in these options. And this, at some stage, could very well cause a decrease in your impression share. So it's quite important to understand the difference between how impression share for a broad match may be calculated in relation to, or in contrast to exact match. So just in summary there, increasing your bids, if you find that for broad match terms your impression share is lower than you'd like it to be, increasing the bids is not necessarily the answer. The other area to be optimized in order to increase your impression share would be the campaign budgets. And we'll start off here by quickly running through the two different types of budget delivery. The first method and most common method would be standard, and this is where your budget is divided over the course of the day. And it's important to note here that this budget is divided over the course of the day based on Google's projections for when impressions would become available, and not necessarily as soon as they become available. The second option is accelerated. This is where we'll be looking to get every single impression as soon as it becomes available and spend the budget as quickly as possible over the course of the day. Now, in both instances, increasing the daily budget is likely to increase your impression share if you are currently under 100%. Our recommendation here, if you are targeting 100% impression share, would be to use the accelerated delivery option, and to back this up, we'd advise having an alert set up to notify you when you are hitting your budget caps and impression share is lost. Or you can also use this alert to determine when you're nearing your budget caps and when you may start to lose impression share, so you can be notified of this in advance. We will cover setting up these alerts in a bit more detail a bit later in this presentation. Now, in often cases, it's not just as simple as increasing budgets at the campaign level to improve your impression share. Often cases, there's just no additional funds. That's quite a normal predicament to be in. However, there is a number of actions that you can take to focus on improving your impression share without increasing the daily budget. The first thing we'll run through here is how you can refine your targeting settings. So you can refine your geographic targets and your language and device targets to refine the reach of your campaigns and make it a bit more relevant. So by reducing your geographic targets, or your language or device targets for that matter, you'd be reducing the number of overall impressions that you'd be eligible to receive, and thus you'd be increasing your impression share as a result. Now, these are settings that can be modified quickly and easily using the multi-edit tool in the platform. So I've just quickly jumped into the platform, and I'm on the Campaigns tab at present. I'm just going to select a few campaigns, and using the multi-edit tool, I'll be able to edit each of those targeting values. So I can select geographic targeting, and I can specify the exact areas I would like to target, or not target for that matter. So in this case, we want to target the United Kingdom and not the United States. I can also follow the same process for language, where I want to target English only, for example. Another option to help you make your campaign budgets stretch a bit further would be to focus on improving the quality scores. Now, there are a number of tools in Marin to help with this. For example, A/B testing. And just to show you where that column is located, I'm going to jump into the platform and navigate to the Creatives tab. The one thing you'll note here is that there's a filter already set up for A/B tests. So when you configure your criteria for an A/B test in the admin section, we'll constantly be checking the performance of each creative to determine what your top performing creatives are and what your, quote, loser creatives are. And you'll be able to take action on this report straight away. So for example, I can filter on just my loser creatives, and the action I could take here would be to pause these creatives and replace them with variations of my top performing creatives. I could also use the copy tool to copy across my top performing creatives into other ad groups in an effort to help increase the quality score. And another tool, I'll just show you where it's located quickly, would be the Optimize tab in each ad group, which is often referred to as the splitter tool. So if I just jump into this quickly. If I click into Optimize, this will provide me with data and suggestions for my top performing creatives and my loser creatives, and I can use this tool to split my groups into more targeted groups and share top performing creatives across the new groups that I would create as a result. So I would just select the keywords I want to split, select a corresponding creative, and click on the split option. When identifying which groups that you need to take action on, there's some columns here which are quite helpful as well. You notice I'm on the Groups tab at the minute, and I have a couple columns added in here. The first one being the historical quality score, and the second being the number of active creatives. So what we can do here is filter on, for example, groups where the historical quality score is less than our acceptable threshold. Let's just say 7. And I can filter for groups where our number of active creatives is less than, again, our acceptable threshold. Let's say that's 3. And this will give me results for ad groups which have a low quality score and not very many active creatives. So this report would provide you with a list of groups where action is required in order to optimize these ad groups and help you improve your quality score, which of course in turn would stretch those campaign budgets. It would make them go further by driving down your cost per click and, of course, increase your impression share as that final result. Another option that we have to help you increase impression share without increasing the campaign budget would be to refine your keywords by match type. So we'd be looking to reduce the number of broad match keywords here and focus more on exact and phrase match keywords. And this touches back to what we saw earlier, where broad match keywords, the auction process in relation to impression share isn't quite as straightforward as it is with exact. With exact match keywords, we know that by either increasing the bid or improving the quality score, we're always going to be improving the impression share. However, that's not necessarily the case for broad match. So we'd like to remove that unknown variable from the equation as much as possible.
Okay.
The use of negatives as well is also quite important. Now, this is especially the case if you do need to maintain broad match keywords in your campaigns. The use of negative keywords will allow you to remove unwanted impressions or anything that may not be relevant to your targets in your campaigns. We strongly advise having negative keywords in all your campaigns and groups to make sure that this is the case, to make sure that you're only getting relevant impressions. We do have an analytics script in our Business Insights package that helps you identify groups and campaigns that do not have any negatives. If you have any questions or would like to have this script run for you, please reach out to your client services manager or your online marketing manager. There is also the ad scheduling tool, which can be a quite useful tool with regards to impression share, because obviously competitor activity will factor into your impression share. And if there are peak times of the day where it's more difficult or more costly to get these impressions, this is a case where you'd use the ad scheduling tool to increase the bids for these high volume times of the day and days of the week. That ad scheduling tool effectively acts as a layer on top of your current bids. So if your current bid was $1 and you wanted to boost your bids by 20% between 9 a.m. and midday, during that time of day, your bids would effectively be increased by the ad scheduling tool to $1.20. Staying on the topic of bidding, one item, if you were going to use our automated bidding tool in your campaigns while trying to optimize towards impression share, we'd recommend targeting a position range rather than working towards an economic target or a financial goal. This is for the reason that if you were to have an economic target or financial goal, there's going to be an instance where bids would be decreased if they're not deemed to be profitable, and this could result in impression share. So we want to avoid that situation where you may have conflicting targets. If impression share is going to be your main KPI, then we would suggest using that position target, because then we know that your bids will, first of all, be certain to be above the first page minimum, and the bids will also be high enough to be certain of a strong ad rank. Now, this position target can be set at the folder level, and when you set this up, you'll have a forecast, which is a model based on clicks and cost, based on the target position range that you set on the folder settings tab. And again, I'll just jump back into the platform here, and I'm going to jump into the bidding tab and click into a folder so I can just show you where you would set this up. You'll notice here that I've selected a position goal rather than a financial goal. And in this folder, I can specify my target position range. So we can say, I would like to keep my ads between position 2.2 and 3.5. So in this case, you'd be around the top of the results and in a strong enough position to maintain a high impression share. When you're using bidding for position, we'd still recommend that you ensure all campaigns are set to accelerated delivery to make sure that we're going after every single impression that is available as it becomes available over the course of the day. Alerts are a tool which are widely used across the platform, and I imagine your client services manager or your online marketing manager has probably run through these with you, as they have a number of different applications in your day-to-day activity. They effectively provide you with a number of insights into your account and will flag up areas where action may be required, and the output of these alerts is usually in a ready-to-action format, and they really can be quite useful and save you a lot of time in trying to identify objects that may need some modification. We've put together a few recommended alerts that you may find useful in your accounts. So we're just going to run through a few of these quickly. The first one is a custom alert for when impression share is performing below your impression share target and the quality score is below a default value. In this case, we've selected 7. This will notify you when your campaigns are missing your impression share target, partly due to your quality score. Now, we're just going to quickly run through the process for setting up an alert, and we'll use this example as an example to do so. So in this case, we'll say our impression share threshold is, say, 75%, and let's say our quality score threshold is 7. Now, to set up the alert, I would just create a report as per usual, and I'm going to name this in a convention that I can easily recognize it. So I'll call this alert impression share below target, low quality score. So I know exactly what needs to be done here. I'm also going to set this as a recurring report. If I continue, this will take me into the report builder. And there's a couple of things I want to specify here. First one being you can choose the frequency for when this will run. So let's say we want this to run every Monday. And if we're going to have it run every Monday, chances are that we would like the date range to be for the last week, for example. Let's just say the last 7 days. The other key item to note here when setting up an alert is that you'll want it to email the alert to you. So I'm just going to enter my email address, and whenever this alert runs, it will email this straight to my inbox, so I'll be able to download this file and take action on it immediately. One other thing that's important to note here is that you can see the preview here of all the affected items, or all the items that meet the criteria we've specified. If there is ever an instance where there are no ad groups in this case that meet the criteria that we've set up, this report will not be emailed to you. So if you receive this alert, take action on all the items, and then the following week none of the ad groups meet this criteria, you will not receive that alert again. So it's quite a handy tool to help you manage by exception here, because you will only receive this when an action is required. The second alert that we're going to run through is a bit more custom. This is with regards to managing your daily budget, and this would involve exporting of some data as a web query. So you'd set up a web query report here instead of exporting to Excel. And effectively what you want to do here is use a calculation or an extra column to just work out the difference between your daily budget and your pub cost. And you'd want to work out whenever your daily pub cost is within, in this example I've used 10%, of your daily budget. So this will alert you whenever your spend is approaching that daily budget limit and you're in danger of losing impression share due to a lack of budget. The third example is we want to alert when historical quality score change is negative, so less than 0, and this is on a week-on-week basis. So this alert will inform you when your quality score is dropping week on week, and it probably indicates that some action is required at the ad group level. And again, this will only flag up ad groups where your quality score is dropping week on week, and you may want to look at optimizing those particular ad groups, and the alert would only include the ad groups which you may want to consider optimizing. It would not include a list of all your ad groups in total. We also want to look at instances where the change in impression share is negative week on week. So anywhere that you're losing impression share over time, we want to know about that, and that's quite a key. Alert to have. And I'll just jump back into the platform because what we're interested here is this change column. So if I go back into the view builder, you'll notice that for impression share, I have the option to view the actual impression share value, the change in impression share over time in terms of the actual delta value. So if it was 80% this week and 70% last week, that would be a 10% change. And then the third column is to represent that change as a percentage. So that would maybe a 15% increase in impression share week on week. With this alert, we're looking to filter on this column for anywhere that, so we want to know any instance where it will be negative or less than 0. And this alert will notify you whenever your impression share is dropping week on week. The next example is especially relevant when using position bidding, because this will inform you whenever your impression share remains stable or increases, however increases due to an increased cost per click. And what we're actually filtering for here is where the change in your average CPC is greater than your acceptable threshold, so let's say 10%, and your impression share is greater than a set value, so let's say minus 10%. So to set that up, there's a couple of columns I would need to include here. I would need to know the change in my average CPC and the change in impression share week on week. So I've got these two columns. And the filters I'll be putting on each of these columns would be average CPC, change, let's say greater than or equal to 10%, and the impression share change, we can say greater than or equal to minus 10%. So we're allowing minus 10% as a threshold. But we're also interested in circumstances when the historical quality score change is negative or less than 0, and the average CPC change is greater than 0. And what this report will do is it will inform you whenever your quality score is negative or is dropping, and however your bids are being increased to compensate. So again, this is a situation that an alert that you would probably want to have if you're using position-based bidding, for the reason that this will notify you whenever bidding increases your bids to maintain that position range and maintain that impression share value. And again, this would probably indicate instances where you'd want to focus on optimizing your ad groups and improving your quality score in those ad groups to keep the cost down. That covers the main agenda points for today. We'll now be fielding any questions that you may have. If you have any questions, please do feel free to raise them using the questions option in your GoToWebinar toolbar.
Cool. Thanks, Ryan, for taking us through those slides. You have a couple of questions which we can run through right now. So the very first question raised is exact match impression share available in the application? Yep, very good question. Not as of yet. However, I believe this is in our roadmap for another column to be brought into the app as soon as we were able to pull that value in from Google. That is an additional column which will be included. We don't yet have an ETA on when that will be available. However, we'll keep everyone posted as to when that's added. Second question around Google's changes to impression share towards the end of 2012. The question is, how has that change impacted Marin? Yeah, another very, very good question. We actually have an article on this. I'll just show you where it's located. I'm just going to click into the help section. And I'm just going to search for the term impression share. And the first article that comes up is related to the changes that Google made in November 2012. There's a few adjustments that are made here. This article pretty comprehensively summarizes them quite nicely, where it splits impression share between search and display, and actually removed all historical data from impression share metrics. Now you'll notice that actually impression share prior to October 1st, 2012 is actually still available for you in Marin. So if you do need that information or that data, you can still access that in Marin.
However, it's worth pointing out that you would not want to resync data prior to that date range, for the reason that if we were to resync it, we would lose that impression share data. So it is there at the minute, and just be careful if you ever needed to resync, just bear that in mind. Another key item that Google changed there is that the lost impression share budget and lost impression share due to rank, those two values are no longer available at the group level. And what this has meant to the columns in Marin is meant that the lost impression share due to rank and lost impression share due to budget, those columns are no longer available in Marin whatsoever for the time being. This is for the reason that this was previously calculated at the group level and then rolled up to the campaign level. And due to the changes that Google made in November, we're actually now seeing discrepancies, and the data wasn't really accurate. So that was the reason why we removed those two columns from the view builder. It is on our roadmap to bring these back in as soon as the discrepancies have been resolved. Again, we'll keep you posted on when those two columns are brought back into the platform again.
Cool. Another question is around something that was brought up earlier in the presentation around switching between standard delivery to accelerated delivery. So the question involves around how do we make that change within the application?
Okay, probably easiest to demonstrate that. So I'm on the Campaigns tab at the minute, and I'm going to jump into a campaign that I know is on standard delivery already. And I'm going to click into the settings for this campaign. Now, delivery is classified under what we call the advanced settings. So if I navigate into the advanced settings page, you'll notice towards the bottom there's the option to toggle between delivery methods. Currently this is set to standard. I'm just going to change that to accelerated and save the change. So whenever you'd like to make that change for a particular campaign, you just need to click into this page, select accelerated and save.
Question around exact match impression share. Question is exact match impression share the impression share for my exact match keywords only?
The answer there is no, and understandably the name can be a bit misleading as it does include exact impression share. What this refers to is instances where the search term that was Googled effectively exactly matches the search term in your campaigns, irrespective of the match type. So this could be broad phrase or exact, as long as the search term that was typed into Google exactly matches the keyword phrase in your campaign, that is considered considered under exact impression share.
Another question here. Am I able to target a different position for keywords within a folder, which is set to use a position target?
Yes, that's correct. If I just jump back into the platform again, I'll show you precisely how this can be done. So I'm going to jump back into the bidding tab, and I'll go into one of our folders. And let's say hypothetically we're targeting a pretty average position target, let's say 3 to 5 as the overall target for the folder. However, if I know that some groups need to be pushed a bit more aggressively, I would identify that by flagging up the impression share. So if I wanted to give, let's say, this group a bit more of a push based on its bids, I would just click into this group in the folder, and each of the keywords in this ad group, I would multi-edit them and place a bid override in place. And I would just turn that on, and for these particular keywords, we can target a position range of, let's say, 1.8 to 2.5 as an example. And this means that these keywords would target a higher position range than the rest of the keywords in the folder. So we can have those two strategies running in parallel.
Cool. We received one final question The question is around how you're able to expand keywords from a particular group, for example. You're able to do this via keyword expansion. So once in the keyword expansion tab, you can filter by specific campaigns, groups, even accounts, and also filter by impressions, clicks, and conversions. So you can reduce the amount of data that you're seeing or target specific areas of the application to find additional keywords. Cool. And I think that's about the last of all of the questions raised. So thanks very much for actually posing those. If you do have any additional questions, please feel free to reach out directly to your client services or online marketing manager, and they will be able to explain a little bit further if any sort of areas that you're interested in or have questions around. Otherwise, I would like to thank you for joining the call today. Please look out for any future webinars that we'll be doing. So there will be iteration webinars and there will be additional best practice webinars, and we'll be sending out the notes for those at a future date. So keep a lookout for those emails and also notes on our help section. Otherwise, thanks very much for joining, and I wish you all a good rest of the day. Thank you.